Hi everyone. So I don't know if Breezy can hear us. I still cannot see her on the screen. Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Hi.
I can hear you just fine.
Good. So my name is Elvira. I'm very happy to be able to moderate this panel today. It's a very interesting topic, product-led revenue, what it is, what it entails, and most especially the importance of aligning sales, revenue teams with product to achieve it. So quickly, I think, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. So first, I know, Aurélie.
Hi everyone, I am Aurélie Fliedel. I am head of marketing at Alan, and I worked several years in large companies and in startups in marketing and product. So I like a lot the connection between marketing, sales, product, engineering.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Colgan. I'm the Chief Product Officer over at Spendesk, based in Paris, but fresh off the boat, so to speak, over from San Francisco, where I was running product management for Slack, and then also in different teams over at Microsoft. My career spans both engineering, product marketing, and product, and one thing I love about this topic that we've got today is that it brings all of that together.
Hi everyone, Gilles Samon. I'm the founder and CEO of Sales Machine, which is a product-led suite of solution to manage the onboarding, the retention, and the churn for SaaS companies.
Great, Breezy.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Breezy. Thanks for letting me join you all remotely. I wish I could be there. It looks amazing. But I am the head of growth and marketing at Correlated. We are a product-led growth company, and we work with product-led growth companies. So everything product-led and product-led revenue is what I'm living and breathing every day. So this is a great topic, and I'm excited to dive in.
Well, great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So first, before getting to my first question, I thought I would give you the simplistic, probably because we're going to talk about it, definition of product-led revenue, product-led growth. So it would be product-led growth is a go-to-market strategy that relies on the product to be the machine that's going to acquire, activate, retain the customers. So one very good example of a product-led company, usually people talk about Slack. So could you maybe explain why Slack is considered to be an example of product-led growth?
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely with my time over there, I learned a tremendous amount about this subject. I think what it comes down to is, and I refer everyone to a post that the CEO of Slack, Stuart Butterfield, posted back in 2013 or 2014. So this is not a new concept we're talking about here. And the title, if you're trying to Google it, is "We Don't Sell Saddles." And really what it comes down to with product-led growth is that traditionally, especially in B2B, classically speaking in the enterprise model, you have a sales-led growth model, i.e. you build a product, you enable your field organization to engage with customers and then sell the product. You get feedback from those engagements, incorporate that into a roadmap that classically spans, 18 months to 3 years, right? That's circa 2000, 2005. What we have with product-led growth, it's really, as Stuart put it there, is it's marketing from both ends of the funnel. What we mean by that is you're pushing a product out into the world, understanding what the value proposition is and how people are going to use it, right? So you've got a communication that's occurring. But then as your users are using your product, you're learning from that usage, and you're learning about how your messaging is being perceived and received, and that enables you to tweak how you're thinking about your own product, and then incorporate that into how you're thinking about your features and the values that you're delivering and the problems that you're solving. So it's not just this unidirectional moving out from engineering through to product marketing, out to the field and out to the customer. It is this feedback loop and is pushing in both directions. And what it is really getting down to at the core of everything is we're not really about shipping features. We're not really about shipping a tool. We're really about enabling something that the user actually cares about. And what they care about is their context in solving particular problems or something that of a larger context other than features. So when it comes down to saddles, using that as the metaphor in that blog post, it wasn't really about selling saddles. What you're actually selling is horse riding, right? The enjoyment of horse riding. So as you're engaging in, as you're building up a community, as you're building up an environment where you're enabling an overall segment to grow, you're defining that segment. Yes, you're going to be shipping a whole bunch of saddles, but there's a whole bunch of other value propositions that are in there as well. Okay, so thinking at a higher level, looking at bi-directionally what's going out from product and then what's coming in from the market and tying all those loops together is at an abstract form how we think about it in terms of Slack. Now, so with Slack getting down to an actual product level, it wasn't about messaging. Because the reality is, back then, everyone was still very much hooked on email, right? So nobody was really looking for a messaging solution. So what Slack is all about is, you can think of it as digital transformation, you can think of it as company transformation, you can think of it in modern terms as the future of work, or the digital office. Messaging just happens to be in there somewhere. But what you're really trying to position and build and sell is the future of work.
All right. And so building on that explanation and the description of how Slack works and why it is a product-led company, could you, maybe, I don't know, Breezy, because well, you're over there, could you maybe describe what's typical product-led growth funnel? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this sort of misconception that a product-led company doesn't necessarily have, you know, often the most misconceived piece of this is a sales team. So I think that one of the things to understand in a product-led company, just like any other company, any, you know, typically sales-led or marketing-led company that we think of, there are multiple ways for someone to initially get involved with you as a company. So they may come to your website and they may, you know, ask for a demo, or they may get directly into your product. And so the funnel is a little bit different because those two options are available. Not only is the funnel different from the top of the funnel and when people first find out about us, but it also changes in the way that we interact with them throughout that entire buying process, because they may choose to, you know, get started with our product immediately, and then they might, you know, after trying it out for a little while, ask for a demo to see, you know, maybe there are other features or ways that people are using the product that I'm missing. So I'd like to actually talk to someone who can kind of walk me through that. So it's very much this sort of back and forth conversation. And the way I like to think of product-led in general is that you're reducing friction for the buyer. So you're reducing friction in that entire buying process. And that's what product-led enables. So it enables us to get immediately started in the product if we'd like to. It enables us to get that demo if we'd like to, but then maybe trial the product before we're going out and purchasing it. So it's all about this sort of back and forth and leveraging one for the other. So what I mean when I say that is, if you have someone using the product, if you're going out to have a sales or market to them or have a customer success conversation, we want to be using product usage data as the basis for that conversation. So you're using what they're doing in the product to feed back into the value that you give them when you're having a conversation. So the funnel is very much a back and forth sort of the entire way. I'd almost think of it more in like a cyclical way too, you know, because when we think of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel is a purchasing decision, right? And in product-led, that just might mean someone, you know, fully onboarded and activated in the product, and that might be a free tier of the product, to which we'd almost want to put them back to the top of our funnel again. But yeah, so that's sort of what I would give on the overview of a product-led funnel.
All right, well, thank you. Very clear. Very clear. I hope that building on this, I hope that you kind of gathered information about this very particular product-led funnel. But to be honest, when we discussed about doing this panel discussion today, some people said, well, product-led growth, it's the new SaaS buzzword. That's just what it is. Like, it's a marketing word, and it doesn't, it's easy, we're going to talk about the flywheel, but then what does it really rely on? And I believe that, well, if we're all here, it's because we do not believe it's a buzzword. But maybe you can tell us, why do you think people are saying that? Do you think it's a buzzword? Obviously, you don't.
Sure. That's interesting because you know, before 2000, in the 90s, I was selling software, and we were selling software to, CIOs, CEOs, and etc., to big corporations. And sometime I was being able to sell multi-million-dollar deals. And then it became, we discovered that it was shelfware. So, despite the fact the price, they were not installing it. And I created and founded my first SaaS company in '99. And at that time, one of the reasons was to, understand the usage of our product. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time because we were focusing on developing the features, but not the tools. Now I've done it with Sales Machine, but at that time, and I think the evolution of the sale and who you talk to the companies has evolved. I would say that before 2000, we were selling to CIOs, CEOs, and etc. From until 10, 15 years, we were selling to exec and VPs. And now, in the SaaS industry, we're selling to end users. And because we're selling to the end users, we need to understand the behavior. So before, we just have to make the CEOs and the VPs happy about the use of the tool to build, nice dashboards and etc. Now we need to understand, the value that we're providing to the end users. They have the power to force a purchase, or they have the power to make a churn. And because it's SaaS, the churn is more easy because you can move from one provider to another, with different level of difficulties. But as such, it's very important to measure all the users, and we cannot measure that, by speaking to the people. Sometimes it's too many, but it's very important, and that's the interest and the importance of the product-led, growth or retention or acquisition. So during the funnel and during all the stages and the life cycle of the customers, the product-led is fundamental, and that's the evolution. No, it's not a buzzword. Zoho, HubSpot, before Slack, were used to do that, and we've successfully.
I think another key point that you really, I'd like to highlight is the fact that it's democratization, right? So you're really enabling people at the individual contributor level, and you can build up a passion within that user base around your product. And those evangelists can, through their own usage, float it up the chain, so to speak, to say, hey, you know what, this is something that we really should be using across the entire company. Or alternatively, thanks to the metrics, you have CIOs that are looking at all of the credit card statements that are coming in, and everyone's paying individually. So the dark IT that are paying for these individual licenses for a particular product, and you're able to amalgamate and aggregate all those together to a single purchase. What I remember seeing at Slack, and it's exactly what Breezy was talking about. At Slack, we started out without a single salesperson. There was no salesperson at all. But what we found, and you can do you can build a great business without a sales organization going into SMB, but you're only going to go so far. If you're looking to get into enterprise in particular, that's where you need to have these longer sales cycles in these enterprise teams. And every time we sat down with a customer, the first conversation was all about them, right? And in the context of using the particular product. So exactly what Breezy was talking about. And it's all based off of the analytics that Gilles talking about as well. And so you have individuals that say, okay, this is a product that we want to use. How do we get this to go across the entire organization to really distribute that value and get the most out of what we're actually purchasing?
Yeah, if I may, what is super important, I think, and what is highlighted by the other panelists today is the member obsession. Because when everyone is aligned in the company to build the best customer experience, the best product, to maximize the customer satisfaction, then you achieve this alignment between product, marketing, sales, engineering. And then you can leverage the product itself, you can leverage the customer engagement to fuel growth. Because when the product answers customer needs, when the product is good, the clients are happy. And the sales don't need to oversell the product because they know the customers will be happy. And so you create this connection between what the product does and what the sales sell.
Yeah, all right, that's clear. Then I think that one question that, well, everybody would ask is just, okay, we talked about a native product-led company. You talked about the essence of it. And question is, when you're in a company in hyper growth, high velocity, we talked about that. But you could not consider that you have a different go-to-market strategy, different business models. How can you actually implement product-led growth? Do you need more alignment, as we talked about? It's in the topic of today's discussion, or total reorganization?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the starting point. But when you achieve this alignment around member obsession, you don't need a total reorganization. I'll take the example of Alan. We are not a pure self-serve company. We have a huge sales force. And what we do when we want to penetrate a new market segment, for example, we create a small task force with 3 or 4 sales and product or product marketing embedded into the task force. The objective is to understand how the end users will use the product and to identify potential product blockers. Let's take a very concrete example. When we decided to penetrate the wholesale and manufacturing segments, we realized that end users expected a phone support, because in those market segments, there are a few people who are not 100% comfortable with new technologies. And at Alan, since the creation of Alan, we had no phone support. All the questions asked to the customer service were handled by email or by chat. So we challenged ourselves and we adapted the product. We decided to develop a callback solution to answer those customer needs. And that's this feedback loop we are talking about, how to improve the product so that it answers customer needs.
Okay, well, thank you. The answer is very clear. And then I suppose that Spendesk, for example, you have another way. We talked in the prep call. They have an interesting organization on some point, I believe. You explained to me that the product, the CPO, you in this case, own pricing. I think it's surprising for most people here. And could you explain us why was it made this way? Why do you think it is closely linked to the topic of today, product-led revenue? And what are the benefits? Why?
Yeah, it's really a culmination of what comes down to a couple of decades of learning and experience. Essentially, when you think about this classical model of pricing and packaging and it being in the revenue organization, especially around the marketing team, that's when you've got an organization or a product that's moving in a very predictable way with, like I say, a roadmap that goes 2 to 3 years long. So a sales organization can look, okay, this feature is going to land here, then that feature is going to land here, and then that feature is going to land here, and they'll build up a pricing strategy based upon that and how it's going to evolve over time. Now, the reality is that, for a very long time now, in an agile, another buzzword that people throw around, environment where you're delivering value iteratively, you're experimenting radically, it means that you're you're in a highly dynamic environment to which you're reacting and responding relative to your competition. You want to have the delivery of value tied to the features that are solving particular problems and have adaptability as you're doing it. And so to have that in a downstream function means that you're always going to either be not optimizing in terms of the price you can actually get for the value you're delivering, or alternatively, you're going to paint yourself into a corner where you're going to have to do these massive overhauls on a regular basis, which is going to confuse not only your customers, but also your field. And so by putting it within pricing, it's not just that product owns it, really you're responsible for it, but it is a cross-functional pricing committee that includes revenue, includes marketing, etc. You're able to tie that better to what the product, not only the value delivering, but also how the product is being used. So it gets back to what we were talking about before, right? And so marketing will define, here's a value proposition or a differentiation, therefore there's a feature, and that's what we're going to charge. But you get shelfware. Even with a SaaS product, you get shelfware, features that aren't being used. But from a product perspective, we know what's being used, we know what isn't being used, we know where the sweet spot is in value, and so we can be adaptive from a product perspective, and that's why it's sitting in product. Makes a ton of sense.
All right. Then following up on that, Gilles, Brizy, would you have other examples of realignment, reorganization that would serve the purpose of transitioning to product-led growth?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I was thinking about, if you're thinking about shifting a strategy that you already have today, so let's say you are a sales-led company or a traditional company and thinking of making this swap to product-led, I think there are a lot of things that need to change internally to really get there. So I think really like your first step of being able to make that transition is getting that buy-in at the top. And I mean like the very, very top. This has to be something that the entire company will be involved with a product-led strategy, and that's just the seriousness of it. And it's a long road to get to a really high-functioning flywheel type of product-led company. And so you need that buy-in from the top so that they can kind of spread that message down to the others. And the good thing about once you sort of start to achieve this motion that people are really looking for is that there is a lot of forced alignment. But I want to almost use that word forced alignment. There's no option but to be aligned in a product-led company. You have every team working off of the same data set and every team working on the same problem, which the other panelists have also noted, which is making every customer as successful as we possibly can, which means all hands on deck. The revenue team is interacting with the product team. The product team is going back and interacting with the revenue team. We have the engineers involved. We have everyone in between because everyone's seeing the same things and working on the same problems because our people are actually in the product. Whereas before, we had the prospects were with marketing for however long until lead to MQL. And then they moved to the sales team to be a SQL and a SAL and all these different acronyms that we have across the old traditional funnel. But now people get immediately into our product, which means we're seeing exactly what they're doing, and every team is involved in interacting with that person and making that experience as successful as possible.
Well, thanks. You talked about SQLs, MQLs. Product-led growth is, when it comes to conversion or expansion, there's a metric that, a lot of people talk about. It's PQLs, so product qualified leads. In a way, it's true, we talked about culture, organization, all this corporate alignment. But then, of course, for different teams to be aligned, there must be some common grounds that, on which we can talk about. So I suppose that data, first, usage data is essential. But then metrics and scores. I don't know, how does it work? But Gilles, tell us.
I mean, that's just want to rebound on the previous question, which is, product-led cannot be implemented if it's not blessed or pushed by the top level. So very often, it starts with product. Sales are the first to adopt new solutions because they want to experiment. But it needs to be from the CEO and even the board level. At the board level, at the moment, I'm not seeing very much talk about product-led. Even when we are reviewing a pipeline, we are focusing on what are the biggest deals on the pipeline and etc. But there is very little KPIs or data. It happens, for example, that I'm asking for starting the board presentation with the customer success metrics, so which basically covers not only the acquisition but also because it really gives you the health of your company. If you have churn, it's not because the product is not good, but it's also because of the the acquisition was not good, the target was not right. So there are plenty of things that you can discover with the numbers, with the scores and the KPIs. So there is the product-led, by itself. is appearing for the last couple years. But now what we need to go is to the next step, which is to identify what are the right metrics for measuring how do you score your leads, how do you score your customers during their journey, because it's not the same thing. You don't have the same scores when you onboard and when you renew. Depending on also the persona that you have, that also may differ. So there are plenty of different, segmentation and scoring which may need to happen, and then to define the KPIs. And that's what needs to be identified and to be, we had exactly the same phenomena when we defined the metrics for the financial metrics for the SaaS companies. So we invented the MRR, the ARR, and etc., and all the definition now, net NRR, whatever. But the same thing needs to happen with the product-led metrics.
I think that really hits the nail on the head, and it kind of talks to what Breezy was talking about as well, which is, this is the situation that we had at Microsoft. So Microsoft, I was there in 2014 when I first joined, and it was very much the opposite of product-led. It very much was a sales-led organization with probably one of the most sophisticated sales organizations on the planet. The challenge that we had was this massive silo between engineering and product and what we had in the field. And not only in the go-to-market strategy and the engagement to the field and pushing out into the customer, but to what you were saying, Gilles, is around the data as well. So we had a CRM with a tremendous amount of data that was extraordinarily subjective and for a data scientist, very, very dirty. But then we had a whole ton of metrics around the usage, not only of a single product, but a suite of products all the way back to the back end. And the challenge that we had was, how do we actually tie these two pieces together to make sure that we've got a complete picture where we've got the qualitative data coming in from a very qualified and experienced sales organization, and then also the data coming in, looking at the pipeline, looking at adoption, and then getting to a metric called engagement. Now, not just engagement in terms of, okay, this is how frequently I'm using a particular feature, but is what makes a successful customer, or what makes a successful user. And that's not success from your perspective, i.e. I've hit a particular metric that's going to make everybody happy. It's how are you really identifying that the problem is being solved, that people love your product, and you've got to the point where enough of the population is using the product that they're then self-driven, and you're going to then have exponential growth within a particular account. And it all has to tie all together, both, again, the qualitative and the quantitative.
Yeah, and that's how you grow.
I should also say that, I mentioned that it needs to be decided at the highest level of the company, including the board, but also, and that's what we do, is that at the engineering level, when they develop the features, I'm asking the engineers to define their own metrics.
Yes.
So, and it has two aspects. One is for us to be able to measure the relevance or the usage of that features, but also for the engineers to understand that they didn't do something for nothing, right? So exactly. they can measure and basically get a reward on what has been done.
Yeah, there are two big changes organizationally that we did. We've done both at Spendesk, and we had this at Slack as well. The first one is every feature that has to ship, you need to have instrumentation. And so engineers will put in their own type of instrumentation, but it's around reliability, quality, things like that. Or it's automated testing, for example. But what exactly are the metrics that need to be tracked and why, and how do they ladder up to a larger KPI that you're driving? So having that defined is absolutely key. And then second, something else that we've done that's maybe a little unusual, you take customer support or customer care out of the revenue team and you put it in the engineering organization. And the reason why you want to do that is, back to product-led growth, is you need to have love coming from your users. And users don't love buggy software, right? And no single product manager has ever put in a product spec, at some point in the future, this feature will stop working. Or no designer has ever said, once this ships, a user is going to be completely confused about how to use it, right? So it's got to be within engineering. They've got to take responsibility for the code they ship and the inbound noise that we get to ensure that we're actually delivering delight and love for our end user, because it all accrues to, again, this overall cycle of driving growth, not just in usage, but also in revenue.
Okay, perfect. I think we're almost at the end of the talk. So I don't know if you have a final thought about this, something that you think we have not covered yet, or general, and then maybe we can see if there's some questions. I don't know. Straight.
One quick thought I wanted to add here was we started to talk a little bit about the idea of a PQL. And so just to sort of clear that up for folks, because I feel like that's a common question. So a PQL, a product qualified lead, it is similar but different to what you'd think of in like an MQL or an SQL. Basically, the main difference is that in both an MQL or a PQL, a lot of times we have things like what is the company size, what is the title of the person, and things like that about who's coming in. The difference in a PQL is that the data on top is what have they done inside of the product? Have they invited more people? Have they tried certain features? Have they logged in a certain amount of times? Whereas in the MQL, we were saying, have they visited a website or downloaded this ebook or things like that? So that's kind of the main swap of what makes a PQL. And then one other difference is going to be that you're going to have multiple PQLs throughout the entire customer lifecycle. There's not just one PQL opportunity throughout, because we talked about that idea of expansion being really important. So yeah, so those are kind of the two big differences between a PQL.
So yeah, same thing as the health scores, because while health scores and product qualified leads, they're entirely based on the relationship the customer has with the products. Are they happy? Is there engagement? Is there activation, etc.? And of course, this changes across the whole customer journey. So there must be a difference in between like the health scores and the PQLs, not the same. And I think that it shows that, because we finished with that product-led growth, well, it starts with the acquisition process and conversion. And then, of course, it follows up with everything that you do. Well, thank you. It was interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a question? We're a bit shy today. I noticed there are not many questions in the panels. Well, let's go. Thanks.